Hi everyone, this is Elias Martin of CollectingJapanesePrints.com. Welcome to Woodblock Wednesday, where every Wednesday we get together and discuss Japanese prints, paintings, history, and culture. Last week I took a break. I had actually some work done to my apartment, and so the place was a mess. It wasn't hospitable to have artwork out. So I thought to catch up, I would show two works today. And I thought, well, it might be nice to show prints by an artist who possibly, if you're familiar with him, you may not be familiar with this subject within his body of work. And the artist that I will be discussing today, his name is Tomoo Inagaki. And Inagaki was a Sosaku Hanga artist. He was part of the third tier, you could kind of call it a third tier of Sosaku Hanga artists, and he started working, technically started working right before the earthquake, which was 1922. But he didn't really get his start as a woodblock print artist in earnest until after the war. But I would like to sort of highlight Inagaki's body of work that is atypical. For many of you, you're familiar with his cat prints. He is known as the cat artist. And his cat prints are really whimsical, they're cute. They have the kawaii quality of very cute Japanese style in his designs. And I think his first cat print was produced in the 30s, believe it or not, late 30s, early 40s. But he didn't really focus on his cat designs until after the war. And today I'm going to show two florals by Inagaki done in 1945. It doesn't specifically say when in 45, so they could be pre-war, they could be post-war. It could be really early 1945, but I suspect it's towards the end of 1945. So these two designs are post-war designs, but they're, as I said, they're florals. So they're atypical for Inagaki. At this point, he was really more focused on still lives, but moving into his cat designs. So without further ado, let's go to the table and have a look. So I thought it might be kind of cool to recreate 2 pages out of the Inagaki catalog raisonné. So we could start with the book, actually. This is the hardcover that goes over the book. It's Japanese style, so of course the writing will be on this side. So this is Tomoo Inagaki's complete catalog raisonné, and it is actually not complete, I should say. It's as close to a complete catalog raisonné we have, but there's a lot of designs that are missing, particularly his early prints. But nonetheless, it's the best book out there, and just sort of to quickly flip through it, you'll see his cat designs. Some of them are in black and white, some of them are illustrated in color. And yes, he is known as the cat print designer, and so a lot of them are fantastic designs of cats. But today, we're going to focus on these two works. I'm going to move back so you could see the catalog. And they're both done at the same time. I'll start with this work. It's a print of a morning glory, or a couple, and it's quite beautiful. I mean, just generally speaking, I want to highlight Inagaki's work at this period because it's so unknown outside of a few collectors. And in the way that he printed his prints is very similar to his other colleagues from the Sosaku Hanga school. The prints are done very loosely with applications of pigment that lie on the surface of the paper, which create a very expressive quality in terms of how they're printed. And so in this design, I want to get in close so you could see the overprinting and the softness of the color that is on the paper. This print reads almost as a pastel. and but it is not. It's actually woodblock print. And it's interesting. I should mention about Inagaki. He started his artistic career as a commercial graphic designer, and he would make signs and plaques for department stores, and all kinds of things. And so you could see that influence in his artwork. He's able to create designs that are very elegant. The lines are very pronounced. They're almost graphic in some ways. They almost have kind of a poster-like quality. In this particular work, you could see he uses these white lines around the image to create sort of an interesting silhouette. And then he adds the color of the design, and he overprints color on top of color, which is very indicative of the Sosaku Hanga artists that were working at this time. But you know, his designs have a very, as I said, a very graphic quality to them. You can almost see this as a design on a poster in some department store, and there's a reason. You know, that was the style that he appropriated based on his earlier career choice. Now, I wanted to show the back of the print. You could see that with any woodblock print, there should be bleed through the paper, and these are the pigments that have bleed through to the verso. I always like to look at the back of the prints. I think, you know, they're as beautiful as the front. Now, this design is the exact same work that's in the book here. Of course, in the image in the book is in black and white. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be fun to recreate these 2 pages from the Inagaki catalog? And so here I have another one. The matching design from the book. It's so much better to have it in real life, of course. So this work, again, was done in 1945. This design is a floral of hydrangeas. And this work, you can kind of see a little bit of Picasso involved here. The vase where the flowers are housed, you could see how he's sort of cut the vase in half. And you could, this is sort of, it almost has kind of a cubist quality to it. And I should mention that in Inagaki's early work, Inagaki was really experimenting with a lot of different styles. And he was enamored by Picasso's kind of cubist style, and he incorporated it into some of his designs. In this print, we do see those elements here. What I think is kind of also fascinating is the way that the flower has been depicted. It's almost done in a style that almost creates it's almost as if it's pixelated, almost as if it's part of a computer image, which is fascinating, considering that this work was done in 1945. I'm going to zoom in so you can kind of see the printing of the surface there. As the other one, the pigment on this design lies directly on the surface of the paper, and there's of course overprintings, and that's what I mean. The underprinting of the print, you could see those colors bleed through to the verso, but there are several layers of pigment that are on this print. And the last layer, this like blue, is very thickly applied. There's this rich saturation to it. It almost looks like a painting, but again, all of this has been printed. And it's so fascinating to see these different effects. Here in the background, there's a window. It's either the window of a greenhouse or in a home. The window looks like it's sort of bent outward. which also creates this really interesting compositional effect. It echoes sort of this disjointed portion of the vase. But, in the background with the window, you could see this soft blue that's been used to print on the surface of the print. And it does give this effect. It's an atmospheric effect. It almost looks like there's moisture, or at least a little bit of fog outside, or moisture on the glass surface. It's really cool. To my eye, this design is so forward-thinking. It doesn't read to me as a Japanese print done in 1945. This almost looks contemporary. This has a feeling of being done in the 80s or 90s, in fact. But no, 1945. So this artist certainly was incorporating Western elements, Picasso's Cubism, in the way that he depicted this flower, and I just think it's phenomenal. So I'm going to flip this over so you can see the back. You could see the pigments that were used. In the first few pigments, there's kind of a pinkish purple, and when you look at the front, it's a very, very deep purple. So you could tell that this print was printed with so many different colors over and over again to create that richness on the surface. I always recommend, looking at the back of a print really tells you the story of how the print was produced. And I would never have known that there's like a lighter kind of almost pink color on the windowsill. Or not the windowsill, but the beams that hold up the glass that make up the window. And on this side of the print, the front, you can kind of see that pigment poking through, but there's several overprintings of it to get this rich brownish purple. So to go back to this work again, it's a great pairing. I'm not surprised. In fact, I'm sure there was a reason to pair these two prints together. There's several done in 1945. And in the Inagaki book, the editor has chosen to create a full-page illustration of each of these designs, and I could see why. Having them out here, you could see. I'll back up. You could see how wonderful they look together. It's always interesting to note the early work of any given artist, particularly the Sosaku Hanga artist. With Inagaki, I'm a big fan of his earlier work. These prints are very rare. He only produced a handful. And at the time, he wasn't a professional artist. And so the demand for his prints weren't that strong. It wasn't until the late 40s, early 50s where his career really took off as a print artist. And Oliver Statler wrote about him in his I think it's called Modern Japanese Prints. And, he dedicated a kind of a chapter to him. And rightly so. He was a great artist. But again, as he became popular, a lot of Japanese artists, or you could levy this criticism on any artist that's popular, when they find success in something, they just then continue to mine that theme over and over and over again. You could say that about most of the contemporary artists right now. That become almost trademarks based on what they're interested in. So if I think of Damien Hirst, I think of his skulls or his polka dots. And so Jackson Pollock with his drip paintings. I could go on and on. But with Inagaki, he became very, very interested in cat designs. And, as I pointed out in the catalog, you know, I would say a good 2/3 of this catalog is dedicated to cat prints. And as I mentioned, I mean, they're very, very charming, as you can tell. They're very sweet. They have that cute, kawaii quality that we've become so familiar with Japan. This is before Hello Kitty, of course, but Inagaki kind of picked up on that, and so he made a career just focusing on these cat designs. And but before he embarked on his cat designs, I think he was producing some really compelling work. Both of these prints are beautiful works of art, but they're also very complicated in terms of how they're printed. A lot of labor and care has gone into the production of both of these. You could just tell by the thickness of the application of the colors how much time was spent on printing them. But I think both designs are also quite compelling. So it's always a favorite topic of mine to show sort of subjects by artists that are a bit unusual. And so, you know, when everyone thinks of Inagaki, of course, they think of these cat designs. And, you know, it's a treat to be able to show prints that are atypical, that are but equally as compelling, if not more so, of the typical subject in his body of work. So I'm going to zoom in on both prints one last time so you could see. Well, I want to thank all of you for joining me today on Woodblock Wednesday. I hope that you can make our next episode, which is next Wednesday, of course. And if you haven't had a chance, please have a look at my website. My website is collectingjapaneseprints.com. I have a lot of prints for sale, but of course there's a lot of information there that I work really hard on trying to provide the general public. So it's also there for all of you who are just interested in learning more about prints. And of course, I have a bookstore and I have videos of all of my Woodblock Wednesdays archived there. So if you've missed a few or you wanted to restart watching the series, I welcome you to go ahead and do that. So next week, we'll probably look at a few more florals. I think, you know, we're still in summer. I think it'd be neat to see some florals by other artists whom you may think of as woodblock print artists of a different type. So, you know, I'm thinking of one artist in particular that I'll be introducing of his earlier florals. So that's something to look forward to. So I hope you can join me yet again next week. Thank you again for checking us out. And please, if you haven't seen my website, please have a look. collectingjapaneseprints.com. Thank you. See you soon.